make a very quick question, please.
My name's Nicholas. I've got a website called permaculture.tv. I've got a question to Raj about late Victorian Holocaust. The subtitle of that, if I remember correctly, refers to El Nino and the global climate change that goes with an El Nino pattern, and how climate change or El Nino and the famines around that were used as a tool for imperialism. It's a pretty, famine comes in, austerities crushes the population, and so a famine is actually used to the advantage of the imperial powers. I'm wondering about the larger picture of climate change. Do you see oppression following the effects of climate change, or do you see some sort of revolutionary possibilities around climate change?
We're going to do this, but I could take 3 questions and then proceed with answers. Yes?
I'm Nikki. I run the 35 Beverages, an initiative to bring together stakeholders in the food system to create a vision for long-term systemic change. My question is for all 3 of you. We have an amazing room full of people here who are interested in making a difference in these types of issues. What would each of you like to see us do in the short term, today, next week, and next year, to make change in the system? And what do you hope we'll all be doing in 10 years or 20 years to continue to foster change?
The positive development of Michelle Obama's planting a garden at the White House notwithstanding, I'm struck by the rhetoric, the neoliberal rhetoric coming out of the Obama administration. And before he left for India, he stated that he was looking forward to prying open markets. And this sounds so violent, And meanwhile, the farmers and the widows affected by suicides in the cotton industry there are protesting. The Bhopal victims are still fighting for compensation and justice. And I mean, what are the ongoing threats of the neoliberal policies in our government, and how do we get through to this seemingly very progressive president who's actually very neoliberal?
Okay, we'll give a chance to the panelists to answer. Raj?
In terms of late Victorian Holocaust and in terms of climate change, I mean, the example that comes to mind is Mozambique, where there were food rebellions, and of course Eric Holt Jimenez and Annie Shattuck and I wrote a book about food rebellions, which I believe is on sale here for a very modest sum. And was that good? Now, the reason to talk about food rebellions is because when they get reported in the media, they're food riots, right? The people are running mindlessly through the streets, responding to some exogenous shock, whether that's El Nino oscillations, or in this case, the heat wave in Russia that was communicated through price mechanisms, and Russia closing its wheat exports, causing volatility in the markets, which meant the price of wheat went up, which meant that the Mozambican government, which already was having exchange rate difficulty, had to raise the price of bread by 30%. So you can find this in a slightly fuller version online. But the idea is that people were taking to the streets not just because they were protesting against a specific increase in the price of food, but also because they felt that the government had failed them. In fact, in every so-called food riot, there's a deeper politics about entitlements and about the failure of government to protect its citizens from the extremes of neoliberal policy. And so the short answer is yes. In every moment of uprising against climate change, or the way in which markets translate climate change, there's no unmediated experience of climate change, I think. There's always a possibility for transformation. And the interesting thing about Mozambique is that there was transformation. The government backed down from its bread price increase and from its electricity price increase, though not the water price increase. The bad side, of course, is we don't know who else is going to be carved up in order to be able to afford the bread subsidies, because the government is still committed to a neoliberal program. So I still think that, I think that politics is complicated, but there are moments where these food rebellions are moments of mobilizing around a particular kind of politics. And you can see that kind of politics, whether you look to England at the moment for the protest against the austerity program there, or indeed Mozambique, where climate change is sort of alive. In terms of the neoliberal rhetoric and also what we can do, I think things like, we have the Oakland Food Policy Council, for example, strikes me as an amazing zone in which we can start redefining what our local food economy can look like. And one of the amazing things about the Open Food Policy Council is precisely that it's opening the doors to things like commoning. Now, commoning is an idea that's precisely anti-capitalist. In fact, it's pre-capitalist. The idea that we would together figure out ways of managing our resources without having to turn everything into a commodity and then buy or sell it. I think that things like the Oakland Food Policy Council are terrific. And what I particularly, what I think we should be doing in the short term is talking to Alethea here, who is part of the Oakland Food Policy Council and is wearing a fantastic hat.
Raise your hand, Alethea.
And certainly getting involved in some of that. But I also think that we ought to be aware, precisely Nora's point, that local doesn't need to be parochial. I mean, the thing about a local food movement is that it can get very enamored of a particular kind of jouissance around, this turnip was grown right here in the soil of Berkeley. All hail the turnip. And without examining relations of power. And I think that's, that we need to remember, particularly we in the global north, need to remember the legacy. We need to remember what it is, the damage that we have caused, the damage that has been done in our names in developing countries. So we need to be talking about reparations as part of the local food movement. And we also need to be looking at relations of power within the local. We need to be talking about things like gender justice. We need to be talking about racial justice. Because those are things that can also get papered over in terms of a local food movement. And I think one of the exciting things about the Oakland Food Policy Council is how well they're taking all of that on board. So I think Oakland Food Policy Council.
Thank you. Nikki?